I'm glad that you mentioned machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's a topic that the population at large doesn't know much about, and I have to assume the behavior analytic field even less so. So I was wondering if you could kind of give us the layman's description of what machine learning is, and then how, in your opinion, could machine learning help in the field of behavior analysis?
So machine learning is, you have artificial intelligence. So I'll start with that because people get all of them confused. So we have artificial intelligence, which is, my favorite definitions is how to teach computers to do things that at current moment humans are better at. So that means that's an evolving concept. That is, artificial intelligence in the 40s might have been to have a computer do a lot of calculations rapidly. Nowadays, you wouldn't call that artificial intelligence. You would call artificial intelligence is a lot further off. So it's an evolving concept. And machine learning is basically just algorithms, so sets of instructions that are able to detect patterns in data. So that's why we say they're learning, because they learn on the data to either recognize a pattern or just to find a pattern. So it's really just a set of computer instruction. It's a lot of math. So it's a lot of multiplications of matrices, notably. But the basic idea is really you give the data to the machine learning algorithm. It will either find a pattern or recognize a pattern for you.
And so in the context of behavior analysis, how is machine learning something that we could take advantage of as it evolves and gets better?
Well, there are so many areas. One of them is data collection. I mean, it's extremely expensive to collect behavioral data because we can't watch the kids all the time. And if we watch them and want to take continuous data, most notably, it's nearly impossible to do it live. You have to take a video recording, and then you want to measure the behavior afterwards. And even if you use a time sampling method, time sampling methods, discontinuous methods are not perfect. So it still requires quite a lot of effort. So one area which I hope will develop within the next 10 years is really, eventually, I would like us to have a video camera, videotape a kid, and then you just enter it in a computer and it tells you the percentage of stereotypy he or she was engaging in, for example. So that would be one really, really cool way that we could use artificial intelligence to improve the science, because not only would it serve researchers, it would also serve practitioners, because it's a lot and it gets expensive. And with waiting lists, we want to reduce at the highest extent that we can the effort required to provide services to children so that we can service more children, because that's a huge issue in Quebec, and I think in Canada, in many provinces of Canada, is just the waiting lists. So by doing this, we're providing better coverage. Another idea is just to make better decisions, because people pretend that behavior analysts are very objective when they take treatment decisions about treatment selections. That's not true. I mean, we all have our previous baggage. When you decide, and I'll take the example of stereotypy because that's what I worked on a lot in the past. If I decide whether to use music versus response interruption and redirection to reduce stereotypy versus differential reinforcement of other behavior, I just go approximately by my past experience and generally in research, but it's not like a very, very objective way to select treatments. Imagine a child with a severe challenging behavior. A lot of the time, the process is not, we go by experience, but the process still has some subjectivity. Eventually, if we have enough data, we could actually train machine learning models to actually recognize, even before treatment started whether it's likely to be effective or not. Because that's what we do at behavior analysis subjectively. Behavior analysis, I sit in front of a child, I'm like, I'm pretty sure this treatment is going to work. But I have no way of computing my error rate on whether it's going to be effective or not. I can be subjective about it, but or I could be more rigorous about it. But technically, really have enough data as a single behavior analyst. Even in my entire career, I probably wouldn't see enough to, to have a good accuracy on whether a treatment will be effective with a given child or not. That's where machine learning comes in, is that you can feed it like 1,000 participants and then look at what treatment is most likely to be effective with him or her given their current characteristics, their baseline levels. So that's really another area I feel that is going to change how we work, maybe not within the next 2 or 3 years, but within the next 10 to 20 years. I mean, it's just a matter of time, because right now we're being fairly subjective about how we select treatment. Even though there's some, guidelines that exist out there, there are some, it's still, it's more theory driven than data driven right now.
Thank you.
Marc, I had a little follow-up question, because you were talking about your data sets. So how do you go about collecting the mass amounts of data you would need to create these sort of algorithms and to feed into them?
That's a challenge when we do this type of research, because we need quite a lot of data. One thing we do is we try to make friends with people who do have data, which makes it a bit easier. The other thing is that there's plenty of data already published in the research literature and in thesis and dissertation, so we can actually go and extract it and then enter it in our models. The problem with that, we do try to do it. We're working on something using published data right now. The issue is that the literature is a bit biased towards effectiveness. So we're missing examples of when it's not effective, which makes training our models or training our algorithms a lot more difficult. So that's one issue. Another area where we've been developing and where data hasn't been an issue is we're also developing models to analyze single case graphs, because visual analysis is another subjective practice that, although I believe that behavioral analysts are lying to themselves when they're saying that we're accurate at visual analysis. We just have an unpublished study right now, just to give you a general idea. An agreement between behavior analysts, mean agreement between BCBA-Ds, is about 73%, let's say 75, just to be fair. Imagine you go to a doctor, okay, and you ask him if you have cancer, but 1 out of 4 doctor disagrees on whether you have cancer. Would you trust medical doctors? 1 out of 4 would disagree. That's what we've been finding. So it's a huge issue. What we've been noticing is that either visual analysts will make very few type 1 errors. That is, they will not conclude that an intervention is effective when it is indeed ineffective. So that's called so they will make very few of these errors, so few false positives. However, when they do that, they have little power. So they have limited power. So they'll conclude a bunch of time where a treatment is effective, but they'll conclude that it's not effective. So behavior analysts have trouble balancing what we call these type 1 errors with this power. And we saw the opposite way around also. The behavior analysts who had the highest power to detect changes with visual analyses also struggle the most with reducing type 1 errors, so concluding that a treatment is effective when it's indeed not effective. So what we've been doing is, to come back to our story with a lot of data, is that for this type of research, it's very easy to simulate hundreds of thousands of graphs, because we can use something called Monte Carlo simulation. So we've been using machine learning to improve the validity of the analysis of graphs. So to the very least, to use machine learning as a complement to visual analysis, because it's an issue. And what we were most surprised of in our latest study is that even with very high effect size, so 5 or more, which is considered high to very high, power of behavior analysis isn't that great. They'll still once in a while say that it's not effective when they should say that it is effective. So they're taking more time doing treatment. So the impact on practice are huge, because people are running sessions for nothing. And also, we can train models to be better with less data points too. So which helps. So because we often want to reduce the amount of baseline sessions that we're collecting in practice and research, is not as much of an issue, especially for those researchers who work in clinics. For most practitioners or for researchers like me who don't have a clinic at their university, it's reducing the number of baseline conditions is often a very important issue that we deal with on a regular basis.